the town that executed a pig for murder in the cobblestone squares and wooden courthouses of medieval Europe, where the boundaries between human and animal justice blurred into a bizarre world of legal proceedings that would seem utterly insane to modern minds. There developed one of history's most extraordinary and disturbing judicial practices: the formal prosecution, trial, and execution of animals for crimes including murder, theft, and destruction of property, with full legal representation, elaborate court proceedings, and public executions that treated pigs, cows, and even insects as moral agents capable of criminal intent and deserving of the same punishment as human criminals. This is the investigation into how medieval legal systems extended their concepts of justice and moral responsibility to include animals, leading to hundreds of documented cases where creatures were formally charged, tried in courts of law, and executed for their alleged crimes, creating a parallel system of animal jurisprudence that reveals the medieval mind's struggle to understand the nature of moral responsibility, divine justice, and the proper relationship between humans and the animal kingdom. Today, we explore the court records, legal manuscripts, and eyewitness accounts that document these extraordinary animal trials, revealing how entire communities participated in elaborate judicial proceedings that treated animals as conscious moral agents while simultaneously demonstrating the medieval world's desperate need to find rational explanations and assign blame for tragic accidents and unexplained disasters. Our investigation begins in 1386 in the French town of Falaise, where a sow and her 6 piglets were formally charged with the murder of a young child, leading to one of the most thoroughly documented animal trials in medieval history, complete with legal representation, witness testimony, and a public execution that drew crowds from across the countryside. The court records from Falaise reveal how the adult sow was accused of attacking and killing a child in the town square, with witnesses testifying about the pig's aggressive behavior and the circumstances surrounding the fatal attack that shocked the entire community and demanded immediate legal action. Medieval legal documents describe how the sow was arrested by town officials, confined in the local jail alongside human criminals, and formally charged with murder under the same legal procedures used for human defendants, with court-appointed counsel assigned to represent the animal's interests during the trial proceedings. The trial testimony reveals how witnesses were called to describe the pig's behavior, the circumstances of the attack, and the character of the deceased child, with the prosecution arguing that the sow had acted with malicious intent and deserved the death penalty for its heinous crime against an innocent victim. Court records show how the sow's piglets were initially charged as accessories to murder, but were ultimately acquitted and released due to their young age and the argument that they had been led astray by their mother's bad example rather than acting from their own criminal intent. The formal execution of the sow took place in the town square, with the animal dressed in human clothing and hanged from a gallows in a ceremony that mirrored human executions, complete with a public announcement of the crime and the justice being served through the animal's death. Moving to 1457, we find another extraordinary case in the French village of Savigny, where a sow and her piglets were charged with murdering and partially eating a 5-year-old child, leading to a complex legal proceeding that wrestled with questions of collective guilt and individual responsibility in animal crimes. The Savini court records describe how legal authorities struggled to determine whether the piglets should be held responsible for their participation in the attack, with extensive legal arguments about the nature of animal consciousness, the capacity for moral reasoning, and the proper application of justice to creatures that might lack the intellectual capacity to understand right from wrong. The final judgment in the Savini case sentenced the adult Zo to death by hanging, while the piglets received a suspended sentence conditional on their future good behavior, demonstrating how medieval courts attempted to apply sophisticated legal concepts of graduated responsibility and moral development to animal defendants. In 1499, the Swiss town of Basel witnessed one of the most bizarre animal trials in recorded history, when a rooster was formally charged with sorcery for laying an egg, a phenomenon that medieval authorities believed could only occur through demonic intervention and posed a serious threat to the spiritual welfare of the entire community. The Basel court records reveal how church and secular authorities collaborated to prosecute the rooster for practicing witchcraft, with expert testimony from clergy about the supernatural implications of a male bird producing an egg and the potential for this unnatural act to attract demonic forces to the town. Medieval theological manuscripts describe how roosters laying eggs were considered a sign of diabolic influence that required immediate intervention through formal legal proceedings, as allowing such supernatural crimes to go unpunished could invite further demonic activity and threaten the spiritual security of the entire Christian community. The rooster was ultimately executed by burning, the traditional punishment for witchcraft, in a public ceremony designed to demonstrate the community's rejection of supernatural evil and its commitment to maintaining proper Christian order through the rigorous application of divine justice. Throughout the 14th and 15th centuries, French and German legal records document hundreds of cases where pigs were prosecuted for attacking and killing children, with elaborate court proceedings that included witness testimony, legal arguments, and formal sentencing that treated these animals as fully responsible moral agents. Medieval legal texts reveal how jurists developed sophisticated theories about animal consciousness and moral responsibility, arguing that creatures capable of causing harm must also be capable of understanding the difference between right and wrong, and therefore subject to the same legal penalties applied to human criminals. The legal precedents established in animal trials influenced broader medieval jurisprudence, with courts citing animal cases as examples of how justice should be applied consistently across all of creation, demonstrating God's universal moral law that extended beyond human society to include all living creatures. In 1474, the Swiss town of Basel conducted another extraordinary animal trial when a rooster was accused of laying a serpent's egg, a crime that medieval authorities considered even more serious than ordinary witchcraft because it threatened to produce a basilisk, a mythical creature whose gaze could kill anyone who looked upon it. The court proceedings included expert testimony from scholars who explained the supernatural dangers posed by serpent eggs laid by roosters, with detailed arguments about how such unnatural reproduction could unleash demonic forces that would devastate the entire region if not immediately stopped through legal intervention. Medieval chronicles describe how the rooster's trial attracted attention from across Europe, with legal scholars traveling to Basel to observe the proceedings and debate the proper application of criminal law to cases involving supernatural crimes committed by animals acting under demonic influence. The ecclesiastical courts of medieval Europe also conducted numerous trials of insects and other small animals accused of destroying crops and causing agricultural disasters that threatened entire communities with starvation and economic ruin. Church records from the 16th century describe formal legal proceedings against locusts, caterpillars, and other crop-destroying insects, with elaborate trials that included the appointment of legal advocates to represent the insects' interests and ensure that proper legal procedures were followed in prosecuting these agricultural crimes. Medieval agricultural law developed sophisticated procedures for serving legal documents to insect defendants, including public proclamations in affected fields and formal notices posted in areas where the accused creatures were known to congregate, ensuring that the insects had adequate legal notice of the charges against them. The sentences imposed on convicted insects typically involved formal excommunication from the church and banishment from the affected agricultural areas, with elaborate ceremonies designed to compel the creatures to leave through the power of divine authority and ecclesiastical law. Some medieval animal trials involved domestic animals accused of sexual crimes, including cases where animals were prosecuted for bestiality alongside their human partners, with both species receiving equal legal treatment under laws that made no distinction between human and animal moral responsibility. Court records reveal how these sexual crime cases often involved elaborate investigations into the animal's character and previous behavior, with witnesses called to testify about whether the creature had shown signs of corrupted morals that might have led to participation in unnatural sexual acts. The legal procedures developed for animal trials included sophisticated methods for taking testimony from witnesses who claimed to understand animal behavior, with courts accepting expert testimony about animal psychology and moral development from farmers, clergy, and other community members. Medieval legal scholars wrote extensive treatises on animal jurisprudence, developing theoretical frameworks that attempted to reconcile Roman law, Christian theology, and practical legal needs in cases where animals were accused of crimes that demanded formal legal resolution. The decline of animal trials in the 17th and 18th centuries reflected changing attitudes about animal consciousness and moral responsibility, with Enlightenment thinking gradually undermining the medieval belief that animals could be held legally accountable for their actions in the same way as human criminals. As we examine the court records, legal manuscripts, and historical chronicles that document these extraordinary animal trials, we discover how medieval communities struggled to maintain social order and moral authority in a world where the boundaries between human and animal behavior seemed unclear, leading them to create elaborate legal fictions that treated pigs, roosters, and insects as conscious moral agents capable of criminal intent, revealing both the sophistication of medieval legal thinking and its fundamental inability to distinguish between rational human choice and instinctive animal behavior, creating a bizarre parallel universe of animal jurisprudence that seems utterly absurd today. but represented a serious attempt by our ancestors to apply consistent principles of justice across all of creation.